Shri Gurubhyo Namaha children. We have learnt in the first part Earthquake by M.S. Madhavan. We seen that first part the tea shop owner is just inviting a person and he was calling and giving some instructions, asking the people who all coming on the way, if they were happen to be a stranger or a soldier, he happened to give free of a cup of tea from his tea shop. He is 17 years old and he started his tea shop at the 13, and at the 13 he started new shop. Before that he was just working in Panipat as a boy in a shop. So, he was working. We saw this in the part 1. We will continue the part 2 now of that lesson. So, really we have stopped here. My name, sir, I am called Bridge. I am 17 years old. I started this tea shop 2 years ago. From there we stopped in the part 1, we will continue from there. Before that I worked in a roadside shop outside Panipat. The heat, the crowd, the pollution, it was all too much. I had saved most of my earnings. I came back and with a little help I started this shop. By the grace of God, it provides me a decent enough livelihood. So, he says that he was working in the Panipat as a boy in a tea shop and it was overcrowded, overheat, and it was not a nice place for him, and everything was more, he was saying. And after that he came to his native place and he started a tea shop, and in that tea shop for 2 years he was running, and now he was 17 years old and he was running a tea shop, he was telling. So, he was just asking, here your tea is ready, strong, sweet flavored with cardamom. Enjoy it, sir, while I get on with my course. This is my daily routine. At sunset, I will shut my shop and walk back the 3 miles to my dwelling on the hillside. The name of my village, it was my village, the village of ancestor. It is no more. Molti is gone. What happened to my village? So, he was telling that he will be just earning doing his job there in the tea shop, and after he finish his business, he will be just walking 3 miles kilometer to his village, and he is telling that the village name is Molti and it is no more a village, people are not there, because earthquake had taken place and lot of life loss and the damage of the places had been taken place, and he was saying the village is no more. So, we will see. So, the Birju is just taking okay. So, he was telling before 4 years, it was 4 years ago in the month of October, one night the earthquake is tremor or common in these parts. These snows may seem eternal, the Himalayas may look solid, but the truth is deep down they are unstable. We who live here are accustomed to tremors. So, what he is saying? So, this Himalaya is looking so height and it was very great one, but it is not like that. Under his mountain, so many earth crust is taking place and we are facing every year and every time, and the tremor, the shake of the earth is being felt by us, he was telling. It is not like that, it is looked solid, but it was not like that. But the truth is deep down they are unstable. That means underground was not proper, it was not stable, it was saying, he was saying. We who live here are accustomed to tremors. The tremors means there will be often there and there shakes, and because of that shake there will be a loss of life and natural death, and there will be because of the disaster the buildings all will be fall and people will lose their life. He was talking about that. But what happened that night was more than that. Usually we feel that 4 years later before, but that night was more. Usually we will feel little, but that night it was more. It was a terrible earthquake. Its effects were felt as far away as Delhi and Lucknow. So, far away from Delhi to Lucknow, they have felt the thing. Can you imagine the devastation of the art of the earthquake? So, you can see the devastation taking place in the earthquake. The epicenter was in the valley not far from here. So, the epicenter was in the valley not far from here. So, the epicenter means the earthquake where the damage will be taking place, that is called as epicenter. That was taken in the valley, and because it is very near, it is not far away from the village. So, there was lot of damages, and he was explaining what all the damages were there. There were 670 villages in the valley. So, the epicenter was a valley, and in that valley how many villages are there? There are 70 villages. So, here 670 villages, 670 villages were there in the valley, and in the valley 602 were destroyed. Out of 670 villages, 602 were destroyed. The earthquake lasted less than 5 minutes. The earthquake took place only for 5 minutes. There were 170 villages. Out of 102 villages had been destroyed by this earthquake by 5 minutes time. So, it had done such a great thing. Time enough to set the centuries old mountains crashing, to reduce our village to rumble, to snuff out hundreds of lives. So, it had taken hundreds of lives from each villages. So, here he is also a loser. He lost his father, mother and his brother, and somehow his sister had been saved in that. So, he was narrating that. It was sheer chance that I was away that night. So, it was a sheer chance. So, luckily I have been escaped, he is saying. So, that I was away that night I was not in the village, otherwise I would have not been alive. I had gone to Puri. So, he went to Puri where to his uncle to buy school books. I stayed the night at my uncle's house. We felt the tremor, we ran out into the open. So, here he was not in his village along with the parent, he went along with his uncle and they bought books for him and in the Puri, and then they were just coming back. It was dark, so they stayed in uncle's house that night. He thought of coming next day, but that night the earthquake took place and he lost his father, mother and his brother in the thing. So, he tells that we felt the tremor, we came out into the open again. So, they went, so they also felt the same and they went out to the place where the tremor was not there. So, they are not in the house. If they were inside the house, they also would have got the same, they would have lost their life, he was telling. Again the tremor came, we spent the entire night outside. Puri lived through the night, Malti did not. So, Puri is a place where it had survived and escaped from the earthquake, but Malti, his own village, his parents and his brother and sister where they are living, it had been totally destroyed and so they lost. For living the nightmare began at daybreak. So, living the nightmare, it is a nightmare. You know what is a nightmare, children? It is a dream which gives you a dread or threaten, and began at daybreak. At the daybreak it had taken place. When the news trickled in of a large scale devastation, there were dozens of landslides, huge boulders thrown up as paths across motorable trucks and roads. Precious time was spent in blasting the rock and clearing the way for army rescue team. It was all of 4 days before help arrived for Malti. So, here what had happened, you know, mountain place in the valley, if you are having, the mountain had been just fall on the village and big rocks and other things. It is time for not having time for them to destroy. It took 4 days time to clear all the villages and to take the bodies and the people who are alive there. So, it took time, precious time was spent in blasting the rocks. So, they have to cut and blast the rocks and they remove the rocks and then they saved some life and some were dead and some were injured. And clearing the way for army rescue, who came and helped them? The army warriors, soldiers came there and they were helping them. It was all of 4 days before help arrived for Molti. So, it took 4 days for them to get the help. I was among the first to reach the village. My uncle accompanied me. We feared the worst, but nothing had prepared us for what we saw. Every single house, every wall, every roof had been flattened. Stone, rubble and dust were all that remained. Our house was a two-storied stone building with a slate roof. My great grandmother had built the house. We were a small family. My father had died after an illness. Just 14 months ago, my mother took care of us. We were 3 children. I was the oldest. My brother Neelu was 10. Bulji, my 2-year-old sister, was a baby of the family. My grandmother lived with us. So, what he was telling, in that home, it was a 2-storied house and fully it was a rock had been fallen everywhere from the mountain because of the earthquake, and their house also had been fallen and it was no more house. It was just looking like a piece of stones and dust were there, and he want to search for us. He was telling that his father had died and his mother and grandmother, the grandmother built the house, they were staying, his grandmother, his mother and his brother and his sister 2 years old, and his brother name is he was 14 years, just 14 months ago. My mother took care of us. We were 3 children. So, 3 children, he was Biju and his brother were Bully and my sister Bully, and Neelu was his brother. So, here we will stop here, children. So, he was having a brother, sister and grandmother and mother. So, his brother name is Neelu and his name is Briju and his sister name is Bully, and they have been affected by the earthquake, and let us see whether they were alive or what were their condition. In the next class we will continue. So, we will continue in the next class, children. We will stop here. So, the grandmother, mother and brother and sister, what happened to them in the next continuation, we will see what happened to them and how they have been saved. Thank you, children.